fantastic topic first and foremost. And just before we dive into it, I'd like to just step back a little moment because I'm sure we've all heard the phrase data is the new oil. It needs processing and it offers some extreme value if you manage to dig it out of the ground effectively. But the thing is, data needs to create value in and by itself. And not like oil, we often find ourselves in a place where we've got so much data and actually only some of it is useful. So we need to really be careful about how we process through that data. And in many ways, going back to that analogy, automation is like the oil refinery. It's how we can process through that raw crude data, if you will, and turn it into something valuable that can be turned into, many different products across the business. Data is coming into this refinery, this automation, from so many different sources around the organization, whether it's from stores, from sort of various HR systems, from websites, so many data sources. We could spend ages listing them all, right? And in all of those data sources, it's different formats, different types, different databases, so many variations in that data. And really what we need to do is we need to be able to process that data through effectively and get it to the right output in the right format. So different teams can work with it in an appropriate way. It may need to trigger different activities or sub-processes within the organization. Maybe we need to highlight issues for exception management, or perhaps it just feeds into management reporting on a grander scale. And in the past, all of this has happened, perhaps not at a huge scale, and goodness gracious, it has been hugely laborious. I'm sure we've all spent time sitting on spreadsheets, copying and pasting from spreadsheet 1, spreadsheet 2, making sure you've got all the cells highlighted and everything, and probably making lots of mistakes along the way. Also interacting with lots of different databases, logins to various systems and so on. And really, data automation can support all of this. It can make it so much simpler so that we're actually focused on creating value with the data, which I'm sure we'll come back to in a little bit, rather than the processing of data. So automation is like taking that refinery and making it fully automated. It reduces mistakes, accelerates the throughput time of the data, means it can be working 24/7, and ultimately it's creating better data and more accessible data. Absolutely. Again, we've come across AI hugely in the last year, but this has been a trend that's been building up for decades. But ultimately, AI is very dependent on what you feed it. Garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, right? So actually, the first piece is how do we stop putting garbage into a tool like AI or big machine learning, deep analytics, etc. How do we clean the data? How do we find anomalies for investigation? How do we apply statistical analysis? How do we identify and exclude outliers? And ultimately, how do we direct all of the data into one sensible place so that we can start to build a single source of truth? Because as we have done for many years, when we have varying data sources, we have varying data. And so when you look at the data, you see one answer. And when I look at a different set of data about the same topic, I come up with a different answer. And this has caused, let's be honest, countless conversations and conflicts and arguments across the years. So how do we build this single source of truth for something like an AI to really start processing? Because we don't want to get AI conflict going on. And we also then need to make sure that we've got multiple people and or systems accessing that single source of truth. So there's no point creating it and then not using it, right? So really, I think for me, this all boils down to the fact that the purpose of data is not about having tons and tons of data, right? That is not valuable in and by itself. We need to turn that data into an insight that is interesting, that informs people, that educates people about something that they don't already know. But more important than that insight, what that data is really there for is it's there to change the future for the better. Because if the data does not change the future for the better, whether that's running through human analysis, AI, tools, etc., if it doesn't change the future for the better, then frankly, all of the data, all of the processing and the automation, everything has been a waste of time and a huge distraction. So we've really got to make sure we can change the future for the all of the time. All of the time. We need to integrate various platforms, and that naturally creates silos. And I think we'll still be talking about silos in 10 years, 20, 30 years time, right? So I don't think they're going anywhere soon, although we should continue to look to knock them down. We've got so many different types of data, first and foremost, that we need to integrate. Let's think about customer experience. Yeah, customer experience data. First and foremost, you've got qualitative data in customer feedback and comments, and then you've got qualitative data, let's say NPS metrics or CSAT, whatever that is. So how do we connect those two very different types of data? It's going to be difficult to get a single source of truth. So we'll have data silos and automation silos, therefore, that exist around that. But we must also recognize, in the very same breath, as we expand as retail businesses, as we think about new opportunities such as retail media networks, we may need to start to intentionally create silos for automation and for data where perhaps we don't want to be sharing different pieces of information around. We need to construct Chinese walls, we call it today, right? We need to construct Chinese walls within automation so that systems, and particularly elements like AI, are not using data that they should not be using, which is crucially important as we start to engage more with privacy type conversations, both for a consumer, but as with retail media network, for businesses, business privacy as well.